Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome on this gorgeous Saturday afternoon. And welcome to celebrating, in particular, the people and poets of Ukraine. Poems in Response to Peril, the anthology, is available at the Western Bookstore and also in the authors section. And it has 63 poems, 41 authors, all Canadian, with the exception of 2 translations of a very famous Ukrainian poet, which you'll hear today. Now, the project started right on February the 28th. I was talking with Susan McCaslin, a Vancouver poet, or BC poet, who she and I had done a whole section of discussion on Auden's line about poetry makes nothing happen, and we disagreed. So we did a few blog posts on that. I'm sorry, I'm popping my bees. And I just ran with this, and it became, first of all, a long blog, but then it became much more than that. We decided to publish a chapbook, and that's when Richard-Yves Sitoski, who happened to be next door on the street where I live, by chance, he helped me first co-ed it and then do a lot of the graphics, the Zoom, and also the ongoing YouTube channel where you submit your poems about response to peril of any kind, and he will put it up. That's our Sitoski.com, if you can remember that. So I'm very delighted to welcome you and the poets who are in the anthology. There's another whole thing happening, that the anthology has already been taken to the people in Ukraine, as well as the Canada Consulate there. But there will also be a symposium of Ukrainian-Canadian collaboration, translations of these poems. That's coordinated by David Bridges. So that's an exciting new development, and that will occur in Kyiv with poets, both Canadian and Ukrainian, next October. So I'm going to introduce the poets. I should introduce myself. I'm Penn Kemp. I was London's first poet laureate and a writer in residence at Western, and I've been involved in the Canadian literary scene since 1972, which is, by my reckoning, half a century. The poets have come from various parts of Ontario today. Andreas Gripp, Andreas Gripp, is here from London. He is the author of Selected Poems, 2000 to 2020. He lives in London with his wife, Carrie Lee. He's the author of many poetry and art publications, including the Selected Poems from Bellevaux Books and the magazine from Bellevaux Books, as well as original art and photographs that often accomplish indeed, but accompany his writings. So Andreas, please come up, and he will be reading, please come. He will be reading not only his work, but also another poem or two from the anthology. Welcome, Andreas.
Thank you, Penn. Thanks for everything you and Rico have done for this anthology. And thanks, folks, for coming out today. I'm going to read a few poems. The first one is by Marcia Barber, and it kicks off the poem's in response to Peril, and it's called Rain. In Ukraine, they are bombing maternity wards. Mothers move from beds to shrouds, babies from wombs to tiny graves, lungs singed by fire-filled air. The breath of war, hot and sour, envelops soft new limbs. Mothers with empty arms, milk dripping from ruined breasts, babies gone, no chance to suck. Death rains from clouds, purposeful and precise, as screams rise like smoke towards indifferent sky. And the next poem I'm going to read is by Marilyn Bowering, and it's called Mariupol Water. In bed at night, I listen to the emptying of Mariupol, its people slipping on shoes, into cars, along the secret paths of their bodies. They are the silence inside missiles and bombs. They are the silence I hear gulls on my roof waking in their nests. A helicopter takes off from the nearest Coast Guard station to find a fishing boat, or a tug with engine trouble, or a paddleboarder swept lately out to sea where the clock of heavens is numbering her breaths. Below black water, submarines snarl through whale pods, dispersing calves which call and seek their mothers through deep water halls, asking where and how and why. Still, there must be people living. It is best to believe in spring. Our hearts have 7 chambers. I pause for St. Teresa to finish saying that each is a room of an interior castle, or in one of 7 luminaries: the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn, and casts a net of prayer and light around Earth's central fires. We must remember the names. I listen for rats, but no walls remain for them to scale. It is not the 7 stars of Ursa Major that rain down fire on citizens and roofless basements. I count backwards so I may fall asleep again and dream the helicopter safely to its mission, the whale calves reunited with their pods, and no more innocents to die. It is best to believe in spring, and yet I hear the emptying cisterns and healing pools of Mariupol. And the next one I'm going to read is by Caroline Morgan de Giovanni. It's called Manna. We cry for bread, and you give us stones. These are the words in the desert where the wind blows sand into everything. Walking in a long line under the blazing sun, mirages shimmer till we disappear, bent in the reflecting light. Time has no significance here. Was there ever a roof over your head, a home with tapestry and carpets from the wedding feast, and a new life started, vibrant, with hope? A mouth gritty with dust cannot swallow, cannot speak, nor kiss, nor even pray. Can any kind of God hear these whispers and groans? We cry for bread, and you give us bombs. And finally, I'm going to close off with my own poem called 101 Yellow Petals. The sunflowers in my sunroom are undisturbed. No shelling of the land around them, no rubble to bury their stems. There's no layer of chalky dust to lie upon each petal, discoloring the soul-like mimicry, a reminder that 100 and more children have just been killed. 3 million plus have fled. There will be no vareniki today. The cabbage rolls have no meat. I will remember you all, my people, in the breaking of the bread. So hard and so crusty, the crumbs to feed the warblers singing Slava, Slava, Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a moving reading. It's so fun and moving to hear poets read other poets. And by the way, the book and the order of poems being read is alphabetical, so you can follow along. The next reader is Karl Jirgens from Windsor. He is the editor of the enduring and influential Rampike magazine and a professor emeritus at the Department of English Literature and Creative Writing at the University of Windsor. And he's just put out he's just edited the most marvelous multimedia magazine from Hamilton Arts and Letters. And it just came out yesterday, so I'll be promoting it tomorrow, but it's hal.com. Welcome, Karl.
Thank you very much. Penn is modest, and she doesn't mention the fact that she's actually in HAL magazine, and so I'm delighted to be able to include her work. Penn, are you going to be reading some of your stuff? No, okay. I was just wondering because, yeah, anyway. Okay, so I will read some selections from Poems in Response to Peril. And I want to thank Penn Kemp and Richard-Yves Sitoski and the authors reading today at WordFest from the Peril anthology. And I want to thank the London Museum and you, the audience, for coming and listening. So let's have a big hand for everybody. Okay, the first one I'll read is by Gary Barwin. It's kind of odd, but it's kind of friendly too. But it shows a degree of anger. It's called Golden Hour, a Fable. At noon, sun was the highest thing in the sky and very arrogant. Cloud told sun, I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, even if I could, and you are. Golden hour arrived, and Cloud said, now I could, but I won't. Sun plunged over the bent horizon. Now what? Night said, and got on with it, loving you and being mysterious. The next one is more to the point. It's by Albert Dumont, and it's called The Tears I Shed. I am not a small ball of light, floating, zigzagging, dodging, while in a state of everlasting joy. I am not a small ball of light without purpose in a universe of countless stars. The tears I shed when the cruelty of this world bites deep into the hearts and spirits of innocent people tell me I am a human being with a heart which can scream out in protest, a human being who can push harm away from others around him, less fortunate than myself. This one's by Katerina von Fretwell, and I think it's a wonderful idea for Penn to get us to read the works of other poets. And so it's in the spirit of this resistance of what's going on in Ukraine. This one's Katerina von Fretwell, and it's titled Kudos, Dear Ukrainians. I can't imagine hiding in subway tunnels as deadening noise descends above ground, quakes primed to collapse on your heads, reducing life to as you know it to rubble. You ration dwindling food, water, and meds. Dehydration already kills your babies. When the thunder assaults you, you wonder if your home's hard-won memories survive. Your daughters give birth under bombs, blitzing maternity and children's wards. Will your children and theirs die in the flick of a madman's monstrous switch? The madman boasts nuclear revenge. If border countries intervene, their safety, ours, the world's, the globe's, are fragile as those who remember, haunted by Hitler. Born during the Second War's turning tide, I can't imagine your courage, your President Zelensky's, and the bloodlust radiating out of Putin's deranged eyes, drunk with empire, money, power's evil trinity that could wipe out life on Earth, even the Earth itself already saturated by weapons waste. Ukrainians, we must support your fortitude. This next poem is by Dmitrio Kremen, and it's called The Lost Manuscript, and it's translated by Svetlana Ishenko and Russell Thornton. If you burn the Kiev library, not the one at Alexandria, they'll forgive you. And the black snow and the white crows, they are already in flight from Chernobyl. Kiev, Kiev, Kiev is not Athens, and here too are Mongols and Saracens, and the black ashes of Ukraine, and smoke from Dante's tercets. It's snowing in Concha. A recruit of freedom and honesty is bowing his head and weeping. To burn a manuscript is to prove that we have never existed in the world, and what bitter trouble you have gotten into, and how silent history will be all about it all. And already manuscripts are burning, and the snow from Chernobyl is flying, and a woman is sowing seeds of marigolds in the middle of a fierce winter. And suicidal birds are crying so that we will remain as a people. And I encourage you to get a copy of this book when you have a chance outside. Proceeds are donated to the cause of Ukraine, and so you'll be helping. This one's by Goran Simic, and it's titled Warrior. And he prefaces it by saying, living the last years in my hometown of Sarajevo, which survived the 4 years long siege, I noticed many of my friends often reaching to poetry books dealing with war rather than history books that make every single life look like numbers. Watching on TV the attack on Ukraine, the only thing I can write now as a survivor is a short poem. Here's the poem. Warrior, if you come back to your hometown in uniform, everybody will ask you how many enemies you killed. But once changing your clothes, nobody will ask you how many times you were killed on your way back home. And I'm happy to say I was included in this book, and I've got 3 short pieces in it. The superhead is titled Words of Peril in 3 parts, and the first part's 1 is saying. Who are we? What do we want? Current possibilities reduce intention. Trying. We read words, listen to reports, wonder, recognize, blunder through half-truths, broken syllables, lament, love, lost. Are left with words, right? R-I-G-H-T, right, W-R-I-T-E. Our being here, to what end, what cost? Outside, terrible lures threaten to swallow us. Reduced in our being, we abide in backyards visited by sparrows, swallows, the others gone now that war and winter approaches. We are here. Here is what we are, who we are. Saying this makes what is and isn't so. 2, words. We speak words. Distant galaxies cannot hear our intonations. Distances mean little. Kilometers or meters reduced to 6 feet, perhaps a bit more. This metered time, how far apart are we now? We speak bullets, utter measured meters. Our rhythms speak distances. We know how space between us is immeasurable, immediate. 3, frailty. Desires and common wants slavishly follow our beings, oiling frailties within our frailties, echoing who, what we are, unnervingly making lucid parts unknown, confronting us with our own dread. Some seek to master such imagos, seek strength, beauty, truth, while clinging to what isn't there, what never was. Such unfastened desires, perhaps better to embrace frailty, adore each other for what we cannot be. And I'm grateful to Penn because she gave me permission to read this little short excerpt from my current book, The Razor's Edge. And it's appropriate to today because it's about how Russia overtook and occupied my original homeland, my parents' homeland, which was in Latvia. And it's from a piece called The Freshness of a Dream. You can think of it as a prose poem. My mother and I are sitting at her kitchen table. She sits with her back to a glass storm door. I gaze at the tangled garden behind her. My mother is quietly crocheting a hat for my son. She peers through her glasses. Her old fingers nimbly turn the wool strands on light metal crochet hooks. It's time for another tea, but I'm held in place by a strange inertia. To break the inertia, I ask her what happened to her brother during the war, my Uncle Joe. She fed me small pieces of that story before, but I hunger for more. My uncle had been fighting with the partisans, first against the Nazis, then the Soviets. My mother informed me that he was tossed into a mass grave only to be retrieved. The entire nation had been forcibly occupied. The bulldozer driver, a patriot, was ordered by a Soviet commander to cover up dozens of bodies. The bulldozer driver refused. He'd witnessed several fingers moving on my uncle's left hand. They threatened to kill the dozer driver. He rejected their threat. I'm the only bulldozer driver for hundreds of kilometers. If you kill me, you'll have mass contagion. The commander shrugged, relented, but remained pissed off. He ordered a pair of soldiers to haul my uncle's body out of the trench. The dozer driver ensured they hospitalized him. My mother told me that my uncle was among several partisans sitting in the back of a resistance truck, the kind with a canvas tarpaulin covering the back. The truck driver inadvertently trundled up to an unexpected military checkpoint. Realizing the danger, the driver stomped on the gas, swerved past the checkpoint's barrier, but one of the ground troops managed to lob a grenade. My uncle was near the front of the truck bed. Knocked unconscious, he was bloodied, blinded, and crippled on his right side. The bodies of the other partisans shielded him. I wanted to know more. My mother kept crocheting. Tell me more about what happened to Uncle Joe. And I'll stop there. If you want to know how it ends, I guess you'll have to see me about getting a book. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't really need a paper to introduce my dear friend, Patricia Keeney. But I got one now. She's a poet, a novelist, an arts writer and critic, and a longtime professor of literature and creative writing at York University. Her latest novel is One Man Dancing from Banana Press, and recent poetry volumes include Orpheus in Our Time from Neopoesis, and these are ancient hymns and modern dialogue. I've introduced Pat. I forgot to say that she and I did a book together, a CD book together called Vocal Braiding, which we are continuing to do and which we took with Dawn, her husband, to a drama festival in Jaipur and slept in the desert at a prince's castle. Pat.
Thank you, dear friend Penn. Yes, we've had some good times. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you, Richard, as well. And London Words Fest. It's wonderful to be part of this. The first poem I'm going to read is the one that I have in the anthology, and I'll follow that with a poem by Blaine Marchand. sitting and cuddling and watching the war. Of minor transgressions, incursions, boundaries crossed, violence, borders marked in blood, frameworks around blank canvas, hard frames possessing emptiness, asserting the rights over nothing but the right to have rights, dismemberment of the body, breast by lip, by warring word, hardened eye by appetite and anger. Of such aggressions I am too aware. Flayed from the skin that draws you, I flinch from every gaze. Absent too often, you seem complicit in the wars that rage around us. By our banked silence, you are accused. This rapt presence at the nullifying screen compromises us. Message and image conflict the truth. Watching is also participation. How do we separate information from the lunatic thrill of destructive event? From the deep selfish satisfaction that we are not they? History proved appeasement wrong once, long ago. Have we learned nothing more about alternatives? There is still so much in the way of unnatural acts, too much forcing and shoving and shouting and excluding to achieve the dominant being. Turn off the screen and listen to words. Let us meet in the spaces between them and imagine. And the poem by Blaine Marchand called About Suffering They Were Never Wrong. Après W.H. Auden, Musée des Beaux-Arts. You can turn away or turn it off. The radio, TV, all-day computer news feed, thinking you need a break from it all. The way you sometimes park your car. Ignore the no parking sign and dismiss it. It's only dash and grab. Or you stand and stare out the kitchen window, lost in thought, a piece of buttered toast in hand, halting before your mouth. But turning away does not stop the incursion, missile flare and whistle streak over cities, bursting and breaking offices, homes and churches, or the air raid sirens wail through the night, or the tally of bodies buried under debris, the crooks of cadavers along roadways in fields, the mothers and bundled children, the elderly in wheelchairs or hobbling with canes, terror sketched and straining each of their faces. Decades ago, I stood in a stairwell turn, looked up. There on a wall, in muted gray and blue-black, a knot of dead and dismembered, a cubist collage of carnage. Mutilated soldier, woman, mouths muffled in grief and rage, a gored horse, a limp baby. Picasso. The old master got it right. There is always the bull on the sidelines, thick-headed, impervious to the destruction, and there, amid the chaos, the hint of the harlequin, willing to thwart him, to turn the day. The last poem I'd like to read is about a part of the world also ravaged by war, one of mine, poem that is, where reconciliation can happen in unexpected ways. Ho Chi Minh City. The tunnels snake way into jungle, farther than the French colonial post office sends letters that school kids write Santa, farther than spy eyes at the Rex Hotel, where fountains soak Uncle Ho's park. We are in Indochina, watching a man in green unscrew a leaf-covered circle of earth and slip in, unsmiling, though not grave. Carefully, he brings his perfect camouflage down to ground level and disappears. With the enemy gone, an ambush is imminent. Hiding below the turf, we walk. Up he comes, holding his round mound like a winning bottle cap, his young face pure enigma. There are traps everywhere, clipping armpits, sticking ribs, rolling bodies on a spit, piercing boy flesh as it falls. What here was suppressed, covered, hidden, killed, while the Mekong quietly crossed a border. Benign, the high Hindu heads of Cambodia watch over holy rebuilding, punching up through ancient roots by monkeys carved to guard and lovely chiseled female stone. Children walk their oxen past parents and cotton looms, coconut confections and fish farms, schools under thatch, stealth boats tickling jungle streams. Women weave straw circles the sun slides down. In temple gardens, dancers, pagodas on their heads and fingers supple flame, kick back history with their stories. Shadow puppets play, bicker and box. Parry and thrust under an antique moon. In green waters every night, expectation paddles dragon boats, sitting brightly upright, inches of water reflecting many ancestral selves. In these places, nothing is forgotten. But how is memory served? At Honggu, you apologized to one man's family for all Americans and the whole damned war. One man, enemy and healer, who, under smiling Uncle Ho, graciously invites us to lunch. Thank you. Just before I step down, I wanted to mention that we also had a sort of, a launch of poems in response to Peril out west in the Okanagan at Riga Fest, which is a festival to honor George Riga, one of Canada's foremost playwrights, whose writing, I would say, is all in response to Peril. So the anthology has been honored across the country. Thank you very much.
Yes, and other launches have occurred May 27th at the Glorious, my favorite restaurant, in London, the Blackfriars Bistro, and also on October 11th to a full crowd at Art Bar in Toronto, ongoing. So next stop, Kyiv. I am Penn. This poem, Kind of Intimate, was chosen by the League of Poets for their National Poetry Month theme of intimacy. Kind of intimate. What could be more intimate than constant streaming on our screens, images plastered on the occipital nerve, imprinted, planted, permanent. What more intimate than the deep love? Roping in family, friends, and foreign faves on the web to our known orbit, in the knowledge that we are all one multi-armed, huge beast we call humanity, backed for or against, wholly alone. What could be more intimate than a marriage under siege, the bride's bouquet between her and him in camouflage, weapons at the ready? A sharp pang of metal piercing flesh, the rude intrusion of steel into bone, sounds haunting the bloodstream, linger along what once were halls of the bombed maternity hospice. Children still under the walls, not to speak of infants, mothers in labor. What more intimate than the time when thought coalesces into form between pen and paper, text onto keyboard, before words arise and fall in place? The sacred alphabet arranged just so in orderly progression that never before has taken shape. As the poem is birthed, its aftermath, crimson placenta of relief, grief, given way to gratitude that something remains while entire civilizations collapse and fall. The fall resounding rings hollow down our ears. In our time and beyond, throughout the barriers of history being broken, the current kind of intimate intimidates, not into submission, but to action. I'm reading Daphne Marlett's gentle little piece. She asked me to read it very slowly. Grieve. Oh, I'll show you how it's splayed out on the field of the page. Grieve. No words match decimation. No words deep enough for detonation. This theater of war is no theater, but Mariupol's sheltering children. Words on walls. Print magnified. Dead hearts, bomb, grenade, collapse. Mati, mama. Burnt words, no stop, no cease, fire at loss. Mariupol, March 16th, 2002. And Susan McCaslin, with whom I began this whole project, and for our Dark Madonna. For decades, you graced the icon corner just to the left of my desk, crowning all other images. Dear dark Madonna, luminant flux, charged words fall from your eyes, gazing simultaneously in and out, spilling nurturance, compassion. Still, you tenderly clutch the gold-clad child whose cheek touches yours. Till now, I never knew your provenance, but when the bombs began falling on Ukraine, I discovered your story. Unknowable lady of disputed ownership, a 12th century gift from Byzantium to Kiev, too soon taken to Vladimir, Russia, then Moscow, then appropriated by Stalin, Yeltsin, now damaged, restored, confined. You languished in Tomaki, abiding in liminal spaces, holding your Ukrainian children close to your breast in a bombed-out maternity ward. You wonder what the days will bring, dirges, sunflowers, another diaspora, the transience of time cycles, holding old horrors, new openings. I can't resist reading Gary Barwin's Nothing Happens. Epistemological. Warrior, check. Warrior, no check. And the next piece I'm going to read is by David Bridges, and it's also Our Lady of Kiev. A friend discovers a famous iconic painting, Our Lady of Kiev. That friend, I think, is Susan McCaslin, but that's not in the poem. And emails its image, originally made by a Byzantine artist around 900 years ago. Prince Mstislav commissioned the Virgin and Child for a church building near Kiev. Another Russian prince removed the icon to his northern city of Vladimir before he devastated Kiev. He installed a puppet political regime with his brother Gleb in charge. Does this historical narrative sound familiar while history bitterly unfolds in modern Ukraine? Is this the first attack by the Russian nation on Ukraine? In the 13th century, the treasured Ukrainian art heritage was taken to Moscow's Tretyakov Museum. The face of the icon haunts me, saddened, joyless heart eyes evoke such tenderness and humankind. The Slavic spirit is deeply embedded here, its tragic defiance fighting against foreign occupation still nobly active. She knows painfully centuries of war's reality, gazing into the darkened 21st century, sees babies like hers being bombed. I feel her tears of bloodshed while the Holy One, innocently keen to become the world peacemaker, clings to no reality except his mother's warm neck and her doubts he will ever fulfill his divine destiny. I'm going from David Bridges to Robert Priest, an old pal from many years. He's the author of 14 books of poetry, 3 plays, 4 novels, lots of musical CDs, and 1 hit song. which was second to Leonard Cohen, right? Second on the chart to...
Oh, the book, I had a book that was second.
All right. I knew there was something just...
The song was number one.
Oh, then.
Or
Yeah. I had to really pull. His words have been debated in the legislature, posted on the transit system, quoted in the Farmer's Almanac, so that means it's true, and sung on Sesame Street. His latest album of songs and spoken word is Love is Hard. New poems, If I Didn't Love the River, are out now from ECW. Welcome, Robert from Toronto. So you'll tell me when to...
Thank you very much. I'm going to read, I guess, 2 poems by other people in here and a poem of my own, and then I'm going to go over there and finish with the guitar. And I might need you, Karl, to hold the microphone. Oh, you're going to do it. Okay, very good. Sorry, Karl, I did my best. So this one is by my friend Charlie Petch. It's called Motherland. They come from the motherland, and my ancestors rise up, Cossack, bloody border guards, find their horses, their whips, their sabers, and ride. You can see them beneath the shoulders of the soldiers, firing the rifles of their grandparents, their babas holding the gun steady. We have foot soldiers from the Holodomor. We have the queers who escaped Chechnya. We have the resilience of a people who grew up in gunfire. We will show you what we do with fascists. We will show that to you again and again, and as you make us into ghosts, we only get stronger, marching in line with our triumphed, our fallen, and together we will laugh at the war you dared to start. And, I wanted to read the poem by Richard. Sorry, I thought I had this marked. It takes the whole world to make one piece. This is Richard-Yves Sitoski's poem. I think Richard couldn't make it because of the passing of his father last night, which is very sad. It's called On the Invasion of Ukraine, February 24th, 2022. We can take walks on snowy streets, exploiting our own sadness. We can exchange pleasantries with neighbors who resent us. Our letters will make it through the post, and City Hall will do what it does, whatever that is, under skies long tired of tedious birds. We can get stuck in the bleached bone snow, laughing at unfunny stories we tell on ourselves, past children who can fall to the ground on purpose and rise when they've done pretending to be angels. So my piece, the poem that I have in here, is called Target Practice. This is the only poem I've ever composed on the Toronto transit system. Going back a few years, they used to have an advertisement on there designed to get our young people to join the Canadian Armed Forces. And the advertisement was a picture of a couple of young people mutually handling a bazooka. And the words on it were, "No life like it." That just set me off. So I just sort of thought, what am I supposed to imagine they are shooting at? This was way back in the Vietnamese War. So anyway, target practice. The bullseye is the scapegoat minus its face. Stripped of its uniform and nationality, no religion or name. It is the narrow telescopic end of the mirror, an accidental twin you can't help killing again and again, immortal, eternal there in its circles, a bland enemy you can never destroy. The bullseye is the angel you go hunting for when winter comes yet again. It is a flock of fathers, finely made small, a round outlaw in hiding, zeroed in on and paralyzed. It is the last child, the last animal, the last great love. The bullseye is your anger compressed, made efficient and holy. Ringed by a dozen halos, it is the bright erupting dot of a hatred that practice only makes more perfect.
I believe they're live. So,
may I use your own? No, I guess it's not that way. Maybe I should have it on the other side, if that's okay.
I'm used to flipping about.
Oops, sorry. Okay.
Just call me Vanna White.
Vanna White. Okay. I have a book called Reading the Bible Backwards, which is just playing around with backwards narratives. And this song, which is in the book, the lyric of it is in the book, sort of rose out of that matrix. Matrix, I like to say that word. So it's called The Bomb in Reverse. And is that mine? Please go, Mom.
I don't share water bottles.
No.
Not anymore.
To your good health and to peace, which I still believe is possible. Okay. Can you hear my voice and everything? The bomb in reverse, it implodes the pyre. It sears on the roof, it sucks out the fire. It snuffs the inferno and gives back the lives. They unscreen their screams and the people arise. They unsay their prayers, verse before verse, in the backwards resurrection miracle, bomb in reverse. Little ones unburn in the shrinking flame. Young Ali has arms, he's no longer maimed. He returns to mother, runs backwards to play, back to when he knew he'd live forever. Yesterday he unlearns his numbers, last before first, in the backwards resurrection miracle, bomb in reverse. The bomb in reverse begins its unfall, repelling from its target over Mariupol. Stern first to the tarmac, the pilot lands the jet. Eon lives his life back to a dream he can't forget. He sees wheat fields rise from famine, and peace upon the earth is the backwards resurrection miracle, bomb in reverse. Oh, little ones unburn in the shrinking flame. Young Ali has arms, he's no longer maimed. He returns to mother, runs backwards to play, back to when he knew he'd live forever. Yesterday. I sing it better on the CD.
It's always better. Thanks, Robert. And here's to peace as we come up to November 11th. And here's to remember the 5th of November without gunpowder, but maybe a fox or two. And peace, the next reader who is not here, I am simulating being Frances Roberts Reilly. She is a poet and filmmaker whose ethnicity is Welsh Romany English, and she has just translated my poem For Peace in Many Voices into the Romany language and is recording it for Richard-Yves Sitoski's ongoing playlist of poems in response to perils. So Patricia and Karl and anybody else who has and is writing, Ola as well, if you've got poems for in response to peril, then please do send to Richard. His email is on the table. Frances has an international profile as a Romany writer. She's just returned from Wales. Her latest book is Paramisha, a Romany poetry collection from Cinnamon Press. She is a producer of Watershed Writers on Midtown Radio KW. Her poem is Discord. Russian occupation of Ukraine, 2022. War mentality is a cesspool, and we're knee-deep in the stinking hell of missing the point. Thousands die as Russian sons text curses on the unthinkable. Atrocity is erased nowhere in the lexicon. I can't tell you my pain, not because it's so heavy, but because I've already whipped it into trauma. Winter's chill is done. My words with it. And I'm going to skip the alphabetical order for a second to talk to you about Richard-Yves Sitoski, who is the co-editor of this anthology. He came in to my desperate need for help in mailing and made so many contributions that he is indeed the co-editor. And the other poem of his that is in the book is called AK-47. The radio is on, loaded and cocked. News doesn't ricochet when fired point blank. We hit the deck already down. When the same bullet stops in 44 million hearts who learn that grief at 16 grams is the heaviest thing in the world. Shelly Siskind, a dear friend, published Uncharted Corners of Consciousness, a guidebook for personal and spiritual growth with Herman Berman in 2012, so 10 years ago here in London. Her next adventure with and for her grandchildren blends the qualities, mishaps, and escapades of wonderful times together, collected and personified into the upcoming limitless world of magnificent Mimi. So welcome, dear Shelly.
Hi, everybody. I guess I wish to join the group of people acknowledging all of the work that Penn and Richard put into breathing life into this project, which now seems to have taken on a life of its own, happily. I thank also Josh, who has worked so hard to ensure that those of us participating from Poems for Peace, Poems in Time, blah, 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 you know the book. He has done so much to make sure that WordFest has welcomed us and that our works are out and about. And Then I think I need to acknowledge the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who said the only constant is change, because Penn encouraged us to read poems from those of our fellow poets in the anthology who weren't able to be here. And we were then submitting it to her so there would be no duplications. I have spent a good portion of this morning, as I sat listening to my fellow poets read, shuffling papers around as each one read yet another poem that I was to read. So, hail to flexibility, and let us always stay flexible. It is the, I believe, the work of artists and creative people, be they poets, filmmakers, painters, whatever, to encourage us to see things in different ways. And in some ways, I would see everybody as having that creativity within them. So to just add context to this very disruptive thing, which I hope will shuffle into a presentation that makes sense, I just offer a small piece from my Fragments and Findings, which is visions from a madman's eyes sometimes can surpass the wise. For though their visions sometimes seem muddy and unclear, ofttimes they see with clarity that which others would not see. So hopefully we are able to pump up your vision in different ways. So I will try my best to make sense of the 1, 2, 3 inserts of paper in the book so that I know what I am reading. The first poem I would like to read is by Kate Braid. What can any person, any one person do? What after guns and bombs and loss, what can we offer but our tears and our thoughts? Only words, mere flags. Our small voice can wave at soldiers and tanks and grief and loss. And what else can we do from so far away with no weapons of our own, except the force of love? You are not alone. Who said there's power in it? The survivors of other wars, other atrocities, that's who. Love has power. Say it. You are not alone. You are loved. You are not alone. You are loved. The second poem I'm about to read is Marianne Micros, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, called What If, and it talks about a grandson. And as Penn mentioned, I have been very blessed with what I, of course, think are marvelous, 7 marvelous grandkids who have been the inspiration for many of my poems and the Mimi collection that was mentioned. My grandmother asks, what if? What if my mom was married to her last husband when I was born? Would he be my dad? What would I look like? What if my mom died? Where would I go? I too ask questions. What if I lived in Ukraine when the Russians invaded? What would I do? Would I leave? What would I take with me? Would there be time to pack a suitcase of clothes and toiletries and pills and photos? Or would I have to escape suddenly with just my purse and my passport? I would rather run out the door, hunker down between damaged buildings, jump over rubble and maybe bodies, suppress screams when lights flashed and bombs exploded. I would join a long line of women carrying crying babies and clutching the small hands of frightened children as they kissed their husbands, fathers, brothers, friends goodbye. I would stand there in the cold, a flimsy scarf covering my hair, my winter jacket hugging me, not tightly enough, as I waved goodbye to everything. What if my family was there with me? Maybe my grandson would say, what if we lived in Canada in a big house with 3 cats and no bombs? What if there was no war and this never happened? Would Mama be smiling? Would you be singing? Would we dance outdoors in the sun? I wonder if I would stay in my small house of bright colored ornaments and warm blankets, holding my cat as I watched out the window. What if bombs or rockets shattered my roof, my walls, my entire house? Would I run? Would I fight? Perhaps I would stand before the enemy soldiers, block their vehicles, yell out, "This is my home, go back." But what if I am in Canada, in my warm, lighted home, eating meatloaf and baked potato, a fantasy world where I cannot even imagine the buildings in ruins, the cries? What if my grandson holds tight to my hand and says, "It's time to go, Baba"? What if this never happened? This always happens. This must not happen. What if? Now, I'm not sure that I'm going to pronounce this name correctly, but the next poem is by Goran Simei, and it's called Warrior. And the intro says, living the last years in my hometown, Sarajevo, which survived the 4 years long siege, I noticed many of my friends often reach to poetry books dealing with war rather than in history books that make every single life look like numbers. Watching on TV the attack on Ukraine, the only thing I can write now as a survivor is a short poem. Warrior. If you come back to your hometown in uniform, everybody will ask how many enemies you killed. But once changing your clothes, nobody will ask you how many times you were killed on your way back home. So, the last bit that I'm going to offer, and my choice for reading before I read my own poem, and it set a context for me. When we did the art bar in Toronto, Marcia Barber wrote, and she really stirred something very deep in me, reminding me of my history. Prayer for Ukraine. My grandmother Rebecca from Lithuania ran from the pogroms with only with one tiny leather suitcase. Her mother Rachel tried to jam her feet into small white winter boots over and over, but the boots were still stuffed with paper, fresh from the market. In their panic, no one realized. All they knew, Rebecca and Rachel, was they had to flee from the heavy black boots of the Cossacks. And now in Ukraine, children are pulling on white boots, warmest coats, fleeing once again. The world is filled with Cossacks and those who must run from them. Let it be filled instead with welcoming harbors, train stations where volunteers ladle soup, and warm homes where children can take off their boots and leave them safely outside the door. So the context that Marcia set for me was reminding me that though I have been privileged to grow up in Canada and not know war, my roots were a father who was born in Romania and a mother in Belarus, both of whom left very early, thankfully for Canada, so they did not have to encounter the pogroms and things that were to come. So today, it made me stand in who I am and where I'd come from, and it reminded me of a story that my mother told me. When I asked her, "Mom, what was it like being in Russia under the Tsar. Were there any problems? Well, dear, she said, actually one day the Cossacks chased your Uncle Charlie and me on horseback. And I said, Mother, that must have been terrifying. She would have been, by the way, they might have been 5 and 7. I said, so what happened? She said, well, dear, we ran into a house and down a basement, and they couldn't bring their horses down the basement. Absolutely horrified, I said, Mother, that must have been so terrifying. Oh, actually, dear, they were just making sport. So today I stand in my happy, what I consider fashionable lace-up boots in honor of my mother, who as an immigrant going to school was horrified that she had to wear them because she looked so different from everybody else, but that was all that she had. And I share with you my poem, Toltec Poles Transported. Toltecs, transmitters, mechanical sentinels, figures righted from ceremonial resting places carry the spark and current of our time. Stoically, they stand observing their flying kin, drones, satellites, wireless communicators, bridging continents, binding the world. In a web of awareness, horrified, we watch as blue and yellow become the new colors of courage. Right against might. Might slowed by strength. Determination. This is our land. Right, full. The world is watching as Ukraine teeters on a precarious edge, arms outstretched with unexpected strength. Right over might. This is our land. In acknowledgement of the rightful determination of our Ukrainian brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Shelley. That story always moves me to tears. Jennifer Wenn is a trans-identified writer and speaker from London. Her first poetry chapbook, A Song of Milestone, was published by Harmonia Press. Upcoming is her first full-size collection, Here Through the Silence, from Cyberwit. She's written from adversity to accomplishments, a family and social history, and spoken at a very wide variety of events. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Penn. Thank you, Josh and WordsFest, and thanks for everybody for coming. And yes, Penn and Rico put a huge amount of work into this project. I'm honored to be a part of it. I'm going to start with a short but meaningful piece by Sherry D. Wilson called Sometimes. Pardon my glasses on and off, perils of aging eyesight. This is called Sometimes. Sometimes poetry is the invisible thread, the line that connects us to our own humanity, humility, realms open, hearts, bodies, spirits, minds. The poem flies into our beings to unravel the unraveling world. And the second piece is one by Tanis MacDonald called We Lived Canadianly During the War, with the epigraph after Ilya Kaminsky. We were unhappy during the war because our bandwidth was low. Gas prices were up and we were tired of masking. And when they bombed other people's houses, we knew to sigh and look sad. And when when Ukrainians sold abandoned Russian tanks on eBay, we laughed and followed that influencer. But when I say Holodomor in class, no one knows what I mean. And when my partner only speaks altar boy Ukrainian, and only when I ask, And when he grew his hair into a celadets that I braided every morning, the clerk at Sobeys asked, "Is that a religious thing?" And together we speak surnames from our Winnipeg childhoods: Shevchenko, Andrusiak, Izadorchuk, Natishin, Stefania, Kupchak, a litany, a list. But when they counted the dead, we counted sparrows at the feeder. And because this is Canada, we loved it when the Baba downed the Russian drone with a pickle jar. And I phoned a Ukrainian friend from Winnipeg and discovered he died in August. Cancer, mid-pandemic. He who used to imitate my dad's accent. He who owned the first telescope through which I saw the sweep of the Milky Way. And we so lived during the war, doing what we knew to do, mourning a single death among thousands. And the next one, hopefully we'll say her name correctly, is Antoinette Voot Ritter, called No Words. They were still there when the pandemic first showed its face. Words like the masks that were feverishly sewn, strung out on a kite, flying free in the world. When protest convoys festered and people like sheep bleated about freedom when what they intended was anarchy, words fluttered to earth, stopped in their flight. When Russia decided to ruin Ukraine, to destroy a people and steal their freedom, not for the first time, words crushed by all that had gone before gasped a last breath and perished. March 6, 2022. My piece in the anthology is called Kaleidoscope for the Invasion of Ukraine, February 24th, 2022. It was written in the very early days of the war and came really from spending an inordinate amount of time staring slack-jawed at the television coverage. A murderous despot festers at one end of a ridiculously long table, his sycophants huddled at the other. Tanks grind and clank through the mist. Russian warship, go fuck yourself. An obliterated fuel depot shatters the night. Utter chaos at train platforms leading away from the shells, bombs, and missiles. One man blocks a moving tank, pushes on it with his hands, and kneels in front of it. Families and pets jam into a subway station, become bomb shelter. An unexploded missile nose down through the pavement. The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride. A school with a gaping hole blown through the wall. Still smoking wrecked Russian vehicles, bodies splayed alongside on the road, and a teddy bear mascot from a distant home cowers in the dirt and debris. Young adults march in protest in Moscow despite assurance of arrest or beating or both. A flattened apartment block reduced to dust and rubble. A mother comforts her disabled daughter in a basement. Orphan toddlers hole up with their caregivers in another basement. A Ukrainian man protests in front of Russian soldiers. A crack, he crumples. A grandmother armed with Googled instructions prepares Molotov cocktails in her backyard. A man climbs onto a moving Russian tank to defiantly wave a Ukrainian flag. A very elderly survivor of the siege of Leningrad protests in St. Petersburg with her homemade signs and is bundled off to jail. Ukrainian mothers pray for their combat-bound sons and knit camouflage netting. At a border railway station, a phalanx of baby strollers bestowed by Polish mothers awaits fleeing refugees. A mother and her 2 children run to cross a road. A missile streaks in and explodes. All 3 fall dead. A murderous despot festers at one end of a ridiculously long table, his sycophants huddled at the other. And the final piece I'm going to do is not in the anthology itself, but is in the video project that's been talked about. And so you can see it there. It's called Evening Star, and this is really a prayer, as you'll hear. Sappho's Hesperus, twilight's flaming diamond, guardian of the portals of night. Lifting my eyes, I'm inescapably beckoned, following so many through the eons, the weary laborer awash in long-sought relief under the spell of sleep's harbinger, a child gazing up in wonder at the herald of emerging heavenly glories, the overdue traveler guided onward by firmament's wanderer. And my wish, ineluctably drawn, may you shepherd we roaming spirits homeward to peace and rest at last. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And now, Susan Wismer. She's grateful to live on Treaty 18 territory in beautiful southern Georgian Bay, and she lives with 2 human partners and a very large dog. She's a poet, mother, grandmother, gardener, dancer, hiker, activist, and a former professor of environmental studies at the University of Waterloo. Welcome, Susan.
One of the interesting things about having a name that starts with W is that you often come last. And it does mean that everyone has already been thanked. However, I'm going to take last person's prerogative and thank everyone again, all of you who are here, all the other contributors to the book, Penn and Richard, and everyone who makes WordFest happen. These things are so important to all of us. And well, when the opportunity to contribute to this anthology came along, it was not a bright moment in general, with the pandemic on and a war started in Ukraine. And to be able to do one small thing, just to do one small thing, meant so much. So I'm grateful. I am going to start. How am I doing for time? Do I?
We're shorter than we thought.
Yeah, so should I just read? Yeah, okay. I chose some beautiful poems to read to you. You'll have to find them in the book. I'm just going to read one of my poems. I begin today with the perfection of small radishes. Each earthbound globe an unseen adventurer in the underland, welcoming this spring's raised bed. Moist soil, friable, worms tender reach, delicate root threads grow, stretch, descend. We can't be too careful with courage, with joy. To keep each small living creature intact, naked, fearless, 2 heart-shaped leaves, a hint of red bulb, white net of rootlets clustered in the cup of one hand, small plants. This tangle of seedlings, a slow exploration of separation, thinned, moistened, returned to waiting soil in the welcoming breath of this only day. A promise of rain, misted brush cool on my sleep-warmed cheeks. Ferns quicken, push their tight curls out of earth, becoming. We can't be too careful with what falters, with hope. My weary hands plunge into dirt. Fingertips cautiously probe, touch tendrils, new shoots. What comes regardless in spring, in the mornings, soil, small plants, perfection. Everything returns. Thank you so much.
That's certainly the disadvantage of being a W. I had suggested we reverse the order, but thank you for your graciousness. One last poet from London, Ontario is Ola Novotny, and she will read, I hope in the next anthology, she's going to read a poem. We don't know yet what it is.
Thank you, Penn. There have been very gracious thank yous. Thank you to Richard and Penn, and of course Josh, and to all the poets and to all who attended. So on February 24th, we were shocked by events, didn't know how to respond. Penn, as a true poet, set right to work to write this poem. So I will read a poem from the anthology by Penn Kemp called Fast Poem for Ukraine. February 24th, 2022. The dark day we saw coming, we heard it coming, but we thought we could forestall war. Is Putin unhinged at last? Quote, Russia's response will make unlike any in history, unquote. Disbelief and shock there. Disbelief and shock here. Quote, each citizen of Ukraine will decide the future of the country, unquote. Will new and expanded sanctions work? Tears are never enough. As if poems could help. As if words would work. Quote, we now have a war in Europe that is of a scale and type unparalleled in history, unquote. Quote, this will not shake Europe, unquote, but it already has. The honorable and the as we learn to pronounce Kyiv, not a single syllable spelt, but caving into the Russian Kiev, but keeping Kyiv. How Chrystia Freeland pronounces Putin's name with an emphasis on you, a diphthong of disgust. As if an explosive P could repulse this errant madman, could in a huff and a puff blow down that house of cards, his arsenal now on high alert. The doomsday clock counts down 100 seconds till midnight strikes. May Kyiv keep safe beneath the holy mantle of Mata Zemlya, Mother Earth. As if prayers were enough, send money. Thank you, Penn. I couldn't read it as well as you.
Send money. The anthology will be available for sale outside, and we have all these lovely poets, and you can get your piece autographed or your poem autographed to the very page. So thank you so much for coming. Bye-bye.